What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 125, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meath, and as usual, I'm joined by two good friends and co-host Roffle and Corbett. Guys, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. It turns out we take 1 week off of the podcast, and the entire format just blows up completely. Everybody's having these chaotic conversations, and we missed our chance. So now we get to jump in and surely save the wild format single-handedly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It is nice when you kind of just take a little bit of step back, a breather, kind of detox a little bit. I'm really looking forward to this episode. I haven't talked to these guys much recently over the past month, and this should be a really fun one with the topics at hand. There's a lot going on.
Shit, I didn't expect to get so wholesome right at the beginning. Yeah, but I think detoxing was the right word because we were talking last week and we were just like, yeah, nobody messaged anybody. I don't know if we're going to record a podcast. And then it comes to Sunday and then we're like, the end of the day is Sunday. And we're just like, okay, I guess we're not recording because none of us really wanted to talk about the format. And I like to think about that as, we posted a tweet. None of us were feeling like talking about the WoW format, and that single-handedly caused Matt London to tweet the following, which I think was super important. So let's start with the kind of the big news that's got everybody freaking out, and that is a lot of people have been complaining about the WoW format on Twitter. I know we've done our little bit here on the podcast, and I think it was like Tuesday. I don't know what day it was. Sometime in the middle of the week, Matt London, who's kind of in charge of the WoW format, kind of the modes, which is what WoW falls under, put out a tweet. Hi all. Recently we've seen a lot of passionate conversation regarding the Hearthstone WoW format. Thank you for that. Today we kicked off a Wild Summit, a big internal discussion about the state of the format and how we can bring you the best possible experience. Wild has a lot of moving parts. It's unlikely adjustments will happen this week, but we're committed to building a great plan for Wild and sharing more info once we do. All right. So immediately that sets off a lot of coping in the Wild community. Lots of people tweeting out what they want to happen. All they want to happen is basically a bunch of nerfs and stuff, right? That's all people have been talking about. But I think what people aren't really getting here is there's probably a bigger conversation going on at Blizzard about the part about the big internal discussion about the state of the format and how we can bring you the best possible experience. I don't know what that might mean, but yeah, lots being talked about on Twitter and Reddit, and I guess it's just open up the floor. What were y'all's initial impressions and reactions to this tweet? How do you guys want to respond to it?
I mean, it's good that conversations are happening about the wild format because for quite a while it seems like that hasn't necessarily been a topic of conversation unless something glaring happens, like the test subject interaction, the oopsie with Kael'thas and Switcheroo, that kind of thing. So it's good to see. I wouldn't necessarily call it a proactive conversation because it is in response to some of the community outcry. So it's good that it's happening, but I think expectation setting is probably a good idea. First of all, clearly this is not going to be something that happens overnight. Nor is it necessarily indicates anything's going to happen at all. What if the result of the conversation is we like Wild the way it is, or we don't have resources to allocate to Wild right now? And that could be the result of it. But I guess even if that's the case, at least then there's the point where, that will be clearly communicated. That's this follow-up tweet is the secondary part of that. So at least we won't have the same conversation every time there's a standard balance change and not wild balance changes. And I had been seeing a lot of things floating around recently where, based on previous conversations, people seem to be under the impression that massive wild balance overhaul was an inevitability for a long time now, just because it was mentioned as a possibility in the past. And that's why I think the expectation setting is important, both, from this tweet and others in the past, and that that was never something that was promised. That was something that was discussed as a possibility, and then the person who brought it up as a possibility left the Hearthstone team. So expecting that to continue, is pretty unreasonable. in current day. And I was seeing conversation as though that were an inevitability in current day, despite that. So it's like, setting up the expectations for that is, I think is important, not just because I'm expecting to be disappointed, but like, expecting too much is how you end up being disappointed a lot of times. It's also, the second thing it's done is made me realize just how difficult a task they have in front of them if they are going about balancing the format with a variety of nerfs and buffs. Because I've seen a lot of suggestions, some of them just incredibly outlandish, none of them, in clear agreement with one another as to what needs to be done. So, if the player base can't agree on what needs to be done, I don't know. How do you solve that problem? It's difficult. That's probably why it's going to start with a broad conversation rather than very specific outcomes or like actions being taken. So I don't know. I'm hopeful, but skeptically.
Okay, first of all, this tweet is just so funny. Like, there's just so many layers to this tweet. The passionate conversation is just such a fun description. Also, do you guys want to rebrand? Like, let's talk about it. Do you guys want to do the Wild Summit podcast? I feel like Matt is kind of handing this to us right here, right now.
I think we're a little late to rebrand 125 episodes in, but
if
anybody else wants it, take it. Take it and go.
It worked perfectly for Facebook. Everybody knows them as Meta right now, right? So how could it not work for us?
Oh, well, it's thrown out there. It's never too late for changes.
Exactly.
For a change in philosophy. But I basically had three big takeaways from this tweet. One, like Roffle said, there's no actual info. Like, there's nothing really to grasp onto, but my God, that will not stop people from trying. People will claw at this tweet like crazy. There's nothing here. It's just like, yeah, we talked about Wild. We had a meeting. It's like Cora's even in the comments kind of laughing about it, saying, I personally think we should refer to more conversations as summits, which was a tweet I enjoyed. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's no actual info. If anything, I'm kind of a little bit confused. I'm like, okay, Matt's been in charge of the modes team for a year now, and it's like, yeah, I think now we need to have a conversation about what Wild is. It's like, okay, it's kind of almost a little bit concerning that there's not like a very clear vision already in place, and that it needs some sort of outside external motivation to happen. That feels weird. Second thing, like Roffle said, the task at hand is just absurd. Like, if they do go about trying to like buckle down and guys, we're gonna go out and fix Wild. We've listened to all your suggestions. It's really hard. Like, as someone who has been, for a very long time, always like pushing the idea of like, hey, do more active balancing, do more active balancing. It's so difficult when you go up and you decide like, okay, we need to go and haul out like 12, 15 cards. Like, that's a monumental task. Now, part of that, I think, is because things build up over time, right? Because they have been so lackluster in terms of like balancing things in Wild for a long time, it just mounts and mounts and mounts, and all of a sudden you end up with this like absurd pile. So it's like, if you had just done the Illuminate nerf in July, wouldn't have to worry about Big Priest. If you had this done Pillager a year ago, wouldn't have to worry about that. And so there'll be like much less on the dinner plate to kind of have to handle all at once. But now we're kind of in the situation where it's like, what the hell do they do? Which I have a lot of sympathy, because like Roffle says as well, that there have been a lot of bad suggestions out there. And I have enjoyed, logging onto Reddit every day and seeing 6 new Wild balance patch notes and kind of getting a good kick out of that. There's a lot of good comedy out there, guys, if you're interested. And the last thing is that I refuse to get baited by Matt London tweets. Like, that's my big takeaway. I will not get baited by Matt London tweets before. It has happened way too many times. Matt London loves to, it seems like, just kind of put out ideas, whether it's for engagement, his own enjoyment, or just kind of floating to get a feel for what the reaction is. There've been a lot of ideas that have been like hinted at and sort of like things you can read into that amounted to absolutely nothing. I will not get baited again, okay? At worst, I get happily surprised. At best, my expectations don't change, and I just like get met with no disappointment. So it's a win-win for me. So that's where I'm at. Those are like my big 3 takeaways from the tweet that we got.
Yeah, the Dark Peddler tweet. After that, I'm never taking a Matt London tweet seriously ever again. And I think the big takeaway for me that I got from this is like, okay, a year and a half later, now we're finally having the conversation. Like, you mentioned that, and it's like, okay, well, that's not a good sign, right? Because a year and a half in, we're now going to talk about the state of the format and what we want to do with it. And yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. I would be very surprised. My frank opinion, I would be very surprised if they went and they changed like 12 or 13 cards. And so, like, I don't know if the band-aid's going to be like ban Illuminate, do something like Cataclysm, go, and kind of just see what happens from there. And like, I'd be very surprised if we didn't just start seeing like every standard patch 1 or 2 wild changes if they went this route. And I don't even know that they will go this route. Who knows what they're going to do? And yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are getting their hopes up and they're going to get crushed. And especially since they were saying, yeah, we're not going to do anything this week, but maybe next week, right? Like at the earliest. And if they're going to be pushing like a patch this week, like there's no shot that they're going to get like 15 cards in that, right? And there's no way that their 15 cards are going to be like properly adjusted. I don't know.
I don't think that there's any indication for any timeline for even like an update on this, let alone
sure.
like
Again, I'm reading too much into
like,
the
so don't even mention next week because as far as I'm concerned, nothing's happening. As far as this tweet is concerned, nothing's happening. So like that, again, expectation setting. We need to pump the brakes a little bit on the
Bring it all down.
I read too much into the second tweet, man. He was like, "There's no way we're getting stuff out this week," and I was like, "Okay, well that means next week." But no.
Rule number 3, Meowth. Remember, go back to what I said. Do not get baited.
I know. I just said that I wasn't going to, and then I did. I'm so bad at this. I'm telling you, man. I'm latching on. I represent Reddit and Twitter. Okay, I represent the community. I'm latching on.
Oh.
I have that hope.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So the rest of this episode is just going to be your nerf suggestions.
Oh God, my terrible takes. I will not tell anybody what I would like because then I will get canceled on Reddit regardless of how good they are because obviously mine are perfect. But yeah.
Well, I think the one thing that like the balance suggestions have demonstrated is how difficult it is for a player base to remain or a player to remain unbiased in the suggestions that they make for balance, and just why it's important to have like a group of people doing this rather than just one individual pulling a bunch of levers based on what they queued up against each week. And I think in reality it should it should give the community and the player base a little bit more respect for like the difficulty in the job of game balance and game design that the Hearthstone team has in front of them. But like given the boldness of some of the takes, I don't think it has by any means.
There are probably 2 jobs in the world that have the most people trying to do them from their armchair, and it's like doctor and game designer. That's it.
Yeah, I don't think people realize or appreciate how hard it is to design cards because they think what they're suggesting is like perfect, right? Like it's so easy to fix the format. Just ban everything that I lose to.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I just felt like we needed to talk about that because big wild news, even though it's technically no news, right?
It's the fabled announcement of an announcement. We'll maybe find out something in the coming months about what is or isn't going to happen to our format.
Yeah. All right. You guys want to say any last little things about this before we get to the bulk of today's episode?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Cool. All right. So next up, we're gonna take a step back from what the WoW meta currently is, and we're gonna talk about kind of magical Christmas land for WoW players, and that's like reversion time. This is like the one time of the year that we kind of get, specific to WoW players, because these are a bunch of cards that are rotating out of standard, that are coming to wild, and then they're gonna get reassessed and potentially reverted. And so what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be taking a look at all of the cards that have been nerfed, that are rotating, and kind of assess whether we think that they should be reverted or not. And we have also kind of looked at and polled a lot of the community sentiments, so we're gonna kind of see how we align with them. But I do think before we hop into it, we should kind of talk about what their tendencies for like I guess what they tend to revert, right? Like their categories and requirements, right? It's like the nostalgia factor, the fun factor, and things like that.
And I also think we should touch on our own personal, requirements, because like we're going to be going through and saying things that we should do. I think we all have our own little rubric and things like that.
Yeah. Corp? I know you know them off the top of your head, right? Like what they tend to do. So do you want to kind of go from here? The like
Well,
the
in terms
bliss
of what they
requirements.
tend to do on reverts, I mean, like you said, it's nostalgia. Like that's the biggest thing that they want to push. So that doesn't always mean reverting a card, because sometimes the card is more iconic or more remembered and more played in its nerfed version than it ever was. Uh, like but prior to the nerf, or things like that. So they usually do that. And a good example would be something like Evil Miscreant, right? Which was like a 1/5, but it was just like there, and it was there for like a few weeks, and then it's got changed to a 1/4. Continued to see a lot of play. They just didn't really feel any need to like change it back. They generally want to push the envelope as much as possible. Like they want to revert everything, and they'll very much resist like not doing a revert. It'll usually be in a situation where it's going to push like a current tier 1, tier 2 deck, or create like a play pattern that was previously a problem in Wild. Sometimes they miss and they accidentally revert Kael'thas, but that's the goal, obviously.
Yeah. I feel like they've only really missed on a couple, or just one revert in the past.
There've been like a couple that have seemed a bit dodgy in hindsight, but yeah, usually it's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Personal biases. What do you guys, you want a card to get reverted? Is there anything other than nostalgia factor for you guys that might influence your opinions?
Generally not. Like I don't really have too much preference as to whether or not something gets reverted. I just, other than like, does this take away from the health of the format? Because for the most part, most of these are going to remain, like if they're not playable now, they're not going to be like immediately viable just because they were reverted. A lot of these were in particular standard nerfs. So my concern is this going to be detrimental to the health of the format? And that's essentially my rubric. If yes, then no, leave it as is. If no, then sure. Like, give us more powerful things. Things are, there's been an increase in power of late anyway. So some of these things, even if they were strong in Wild when they were nerfed, they might not be in the future. So just trying to evaluate it based on, its theoretical or perceived impact on the metagame.
Yeah, personally, I'm probably going to avoid reverting cards that have currently seen play in Wild for the most part. Like if a card is already strong enough to see play, I'm probably not going to say, hey, let's buff this, because Wild is a silly format. If it's strong enough for the silly format, it doesn't need to be stronger. Probably just that, and then I'm probably going to try and like avoid cards that I think create non-games. So anything that kind of like creates a game where the card is played and the game kind of ends, that's just going to be mostly avoided.
Yeah. And I think to add on to that, I'm kind of just down for, especially if a card, can push an archetype, right? Like something that's not very good or hasn't really been a thing, and then reverting that allows it to be a thing, I think will definitely be high on my list. But we got a lot of cards because they have been very nerf happy over the past couple of years, and so we have a bunch of cards that are rotating to get into, and we're gonna go by class. So obviously, Death Knight doesn't have anything worth talking about. So we'll start with Demon Hunter, and the first one is Final Showdown, which was the Demon Hunter questline where you draw a certain amount of cards in a turn, and then you discount the cards that you had drawn. They kind of just wanted to nuke the deck in standard, so they nerfed that first stage from 4 cards to 6. I think when they did this, we were all very much in unison of, yeah, they definitely need to revert this and should revert this when it rotates in 2 months. And so now that the time is coming, has your opinion changed? Or are we all still like, yes, bring it back to 4?
Yeah, bring it back to 4. I mean, this is one where it's been at 4 cards way longer than it was at 6, and it was never really a broken thing in Wild. So like, I don't think there's any risk in it.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty straightforward. Wasn't really strong, and it's a Demon Hunter card, so revert the Demon Hunter cards.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. All right, starting off with the easy one. All right, and then Carry a Fell Soul. So this was the 6-mana 6/6 legendary that would transform into a copy of a demon in your deck. And so it was basically being used as a Barnes effect in standard for Zilog. It got nerfed to a 7-mana, I believe 7/7. I haven't ever even looked at this card since it got nerfed. I think that's a good sign, as in it should maybe come back to 6. Even if it does end up becoming a Barnes-like card, it's a Barnes-like card on 6, and it's also in Demon Hunter. And if the best thing you're doing is like Zilog, I think that's okay.
Yeah, this would be fine. It was fine at 6 before. Like, if anything, the format is much less kind to turn 6 right now than it was when this card was nerfed. So, like, no, there's no risk here.
I will say as well as note, this was the most agreed upon card by the voters. 92% of people said revert it, and 8% really hate Demon Hunter.
Yeah,
and 8% are standard players.
Yeah, they've been traumatized by Kyria. Yeah, and then kind of just wrapping back around to the quest. I don't know why 20% of you guys want to keep that thing nerfed, but most of the community did say yes, revert it back to 4.
I think there always will be, with all the questline cards, there will be a portion that fundamentally hate them, and so I expect that kind of to be the minimum for the questline reverts.
Yeah, there could also just be some concern about like future proofing for like mana cheating in the format, but like I don't feel like the quest line is efficient mana cheating for a variety of reasons. So
it's very hard.
Yeah, like you compare it to just Rod, and like it's a different.
Oh, just you wait until we get to the Ruined Mithril Rod part of this. It's interesting.
Spicy takes are gonna fly about Mithril Rod.
All right, let's move into Druid. Okay, so in Druid, let's start with an easy one. Razormane Battle Guard. So this was the 2/3 that discounted the first taunt you played each turn by 2. It was kind of played in an aggro Druid shell. Got nerfed to a 2/2. 84% of the community wants it reverted back to a 2/3. Do you guys agree?
Sure. Yeah, like I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like the aggro Druid hasn't really been a concern for quite a while. It's kind of an interesting deck that it like enables. So yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, pretty light. Like, it's not my favorite card ever because it is one of these like very snowbally type things. But for the archetype that's pushing like Taunt aggro Druid, like that's not very offensive. I think.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, let's talk about Celestial Alignment. Maybe one of the more polarizing cards in Hearthstone history. So this card got nerfed twice. So it used to be 7 mana affect both players. Then it got nerfed to 8 mana affect both players. And then it got nerfed again to 8 mana only affect the person that played it. And I'm glad to see what the community has voted here. 83.5% of them want to keep it as is. But there's a crazy 7.5% of people out there that want it reverted back to OG Celestial Alignment. Yeah, I don't know what to think about those 7.5 because I'm very much in the boat of keep it as is. It's a very unfun card to play against, and if you want to do the thing, you can still do the thing as it's set up.
No, Wild should be Wild Meowth. Like, giving me everything back. There clearly couldn't be any harm in that. No, my vote was to let's just go ahead and bump this up to 9. Why stop at where it is now? Just keep it going. Like every year, in fact, what we can do is increase the mana cost of Celestial Alignment, and I think most people will be happy with that.
Damn, that's a new idea, Roffle. I hadn't heard that one, but you've got me on board. I love that change. I will just say as well that there's actually been a stealth change to a card, which makes alignment basically unrevertible. Geist now doesn't just hit original cost, guys. It hits every 1-cost spell. So if you revert alignment and you make the opponent's deck cost 1 and you play Geist, that will delete every spell in the opponent's deck. That was like an undocumented change, but that's a thing that they're doing, and they said it's intentional. So that would be very, very, very toxic if they accidentally did that.
Wait.
Yes, it would.
You mean there's no way that's intentional? The Geist has been in the game for like 6 years. What do you mean that's intentional?
That's what they've done. They've I don't know whether I don't know whether it indicates like Geist is going to core or if like something changed, but there was dev comments on Twitter. They're like, that's just how it's meant to work, I think. So that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know what? I'll take it if it means that we never get Celestial Alignment reverted. So you know what?
Yeah,
that's fine with me. All right. Last but not least, Wild Heart Guff. So Guff used to give you full mana crystals. It now gives you empty mana crystals. 79% of people want to keep it as is. Kind of that rule of thumb that Corb had earlier, where it still sees play in Wild Druid decks. I don't think we need to revert it because it was absolutely gross when it was in its original form. I don't know if you guys agree.
I mean, yeah, Druid's not in the greatest spot right now, but like we don't need to put a broken card back into Druid just because it's struggling at the moment. Like it still has broken cards that are like on the verge of further break-in. So just because it's like getting overrun at the moment doesn't mean we need to break the deck for the class for the future. Plus, I think it would just be an incredibly unpopular choice too. Like there's not much nostalgia given to Guff. People want him further nerfed even when he's just kind of a fine card in the format right now, and kind of again Druid is struggling, so I don't think that there's a world in which it would be sane to like it would just kind of be out of touch with what the player base wants if they were to revert Guff. But I mean Kel'Thas got reverted, so I don't know.
I really love where Guff is at right now, so I just like happy if they just keep it where he is. I really like the Druid is doing this beyond 10 mana thing, so I am happy they went down the Guff route, and they're going to explore it in future sets as well, in a more limited capacity, probably.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Can I hit you guys with a wild hypothetical? So this tweet that Matt Lunda put out. What if they end up changing stuff like Twig Sphere and Gloop to like something like Refresh instead of Game Mana Crystals? Does that change your mind on whether you guys want Guff reverted or not?
No, because I assume that that's probably not happening anyway. So
I said
even
in
if
this
it did,
purely hypothetical world. Come on.
yeah. Even if it does happen, I still am very satisfied with where Guff is at right now.
Yeah, Guff he's just a fine card.
Yeah, he's good.
Cool. All right. Sorry to the 21% of you guys that want it reverted. Nobody on here agrees. All right. Let's move into Hunter. Let's start with the easy one. Kolkar Pack Runner. This used to be a 2-mana 2/3 that would summon a 1/1 with Rush every time you cast a spell. It got nerfed to a 3-mana 3/4. 89% of people want it back at 2 mana. I think I also want it back at 2 mana. I think you guys also want it back at 2 mana.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think I would ever play the card even at 2 mana like anymore. Like I can already draw off a buzzard in other ways. There's better ways to make that happen. But sure, just it's a cool card, and I miss him. I should call him.
You could play Marino Hunter maybe at 2 mana, maybe. All right, let's talk about the next two cards here, kind of in combination because they definitely synced together. That is Defend the Dwarven District, which is the Hunter questline. It got nerfed to having the first stage require 3 spells instead of 2. And then Dragonbane Shot, which was very good in Questline Hunter. Used to be 2 mana, deal 2, honorable kill, get another Dragonbane Shot. It got reverted to 3 mana. So let's just talk about them, I guess, together. Hunter questline. Like, do we want this as something that is potentially playable in the format?
I mean, I would consider it playable. I think where it's at right now is just fine. Like it's not good, but like you can play games of Hearthstone with it and like occasionally win a few. So I think it's fine. I don't know. I feel like Dragonbane Shot is the riskier one to change. So I'm confused about the split here, especially since I would think that the people that really just hate Defend the Dwarven District would also really just hate Dragonbane Shot. So like I'm confused where the divide is in terms of the voting because more people really wanted to keep the quest nuked while some wanted to open up the Dragonbane Shot. But I just think both are just fine the way they are now. I don't really want to go back to a world where Questline Hunter is much more popular than it is now, or as popular as it was when it was one of the top decks. So I think they're both just fine.
Of keeping the defend where it is, I don't think it's the type of deck that I kind of want to keep pushing. And if you like, we're very close to a world where if you revert this, that we go back to Questline Hunter to smashing the Tavish down on turn 5, like on curve, and that's kind of a bit of an unpleasant place. I'm actually though one of those people where like I want defend to stay where it is, but I want to revert Dragonbane Shot. Dragonbane Shot is like completely unplayable right now, and I don't think the card was actually that offensive the first go around. It was only mostly to do with how powerful and fast the questline was. So I think with that being nerfed, I don't really have that much of a problem with the Dragonbane Shot, especially in Wild, where like the whole reoccurring infinite potential it's much less of a deal, much less of a big deal in Wild. You know, games don't really go on for like turn 9, 10, 11, so on. So like, I don't really mind it that much.
I guess also Dragonbane Shot didn't exist at the same time as Furious Owl, and like that kind of takes the hand refilling like burden away from a card like Dragonbane Shot. So it's like maybe it's not even that big of an offender anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not like quest lines, and so I'm kind of in the same boat as everybody else that doesn't, want it nerfed. But it's also like it's kind of unplayable, right? And so part of me is like, I want more viable archetypes, but I don't really know that I want Questline Hunter to be one of those archetypes because, like you said, turn 5 Tavish is kind of gross, right? When it comes to like maybe a problematic play experience. So I'm a little bit, I guess, more in the middle of the quest line than you guys are, but I definitely also want Dragonbane reverted. And if getting Dragonbane Shot reverted means we can't have the quest, I think that's something that I'm like totally okay with. But yeah, is Dragonbane Shot arcane, by the way? Do we know?
I don't think so.
No.
That actually could have been so cool. But
I think when they printed the arcane stuff, wasn't Arcane Shot the only arcane spell?
Yeah, that was some of the problem with it.
Take your word for it. I don't actually know. All I know is that I played that arcane quest hunter in our little show match, and I could not win a game to save my life, even against meme decks. And so I don't know, dude. That deck's, ooh, yeah. All right, let's move into Mage. Refreshing Spring Water, another one that was super close in the community voting here. 54.5% of people wanted to keep it at 5 mana. 45.5% wanted to revert it back to 4. So just to remind people, this is the one that said draw 2 cards for each spell that you drew. Refresh 2 mana. I don't know. Sork Apprentice is gone. Like, is there any reason that we can't have this back at 4 mana?
I mean, probably not. That was the reason it was a problem, right? And then also the fact that you just had to explain what the card does indicates where it kind of stands in the format at the moment. So, like, give this back just for Corb's sake. Come on.
Kansas Flow costs 4 mana. Like, if Flow costs 4, Apprentice costs 4. What are we doing? What is this imaginary spell mage deck that's oppressive? Like, you can't gain mana back on it. Like, it's a strong payoff for a deck that is otherwise non-existent. Like, it's fine. Just bring it back.
Just bring back everything slowly but surely, except for Sork, and then I'm sure Corb will try it even with 4 mana Sork.
Honestly, like, I don't even feel that strongly about this card. Like, I say that, but like, I think if you put this back to 4, nothing happens anyway. So it's just like, ugh, whatever.
Yeah, agreed. It could maybe do something with this next card though, and that's the Mage quest line. Maybe you're running a lot of spells in this, and so this is Sorcerer's Gambit. So I don't know if this ever saw play in Wild. So for those of you guys that are Wild only players, this is the one where you play like a Fire, Frost, Arcane spell for like each of the 2 stages, and then like your final reward was Varden that gave you permanent +3 spell damage. They nerfed that to permanent +2 spell damage. 77.5% of people want to revert it back to +3 spell damage. This never saw play in Wild, right? Because we had just had other mage combo decks that were faster.
People played it a lot at lower ranks. It was almost the exact, like, people just played the standard version. It was like actually very popular. But yeah.
Okay.
I'll
take that back then.
Right.
But
it was played, but it was not strong. It was one of the more inoffensive quest lines. Like, I know that like quest lines as a concept aren't super popular, but this one is fine. Just, it's not going to be a problem at +3 spell damage. That's like, I mean, you compare it to Tavish, right? Like, what it does and what Tavish does in Questline Hunter are like, the difference is pretty absurd in both the time it takes to get it online and the effect that it has on the game for the rest of the game. So
yeah, I mean, this quest line was like the learning experience for Team 5, where they had all this mana cheating and draw, and then initially they were like, I guess we got to nerf Spring Water, and then they're like, I guess we got to nerf Sorcerer's Gambit. And then Mizaki started seeing play, and then it's like, oh, it's Incanter's Flow. And then they pushed Incanter's Flow up, and it's like, oh, if they hadn't done that from the jump, there probably wouldn't have been nearly as many complaints about Questline Mage at all.
Yeah. Do you think this would ever see play? Now that we don't have Sork, right? So people can't ignite or APM or anything. Is this now the No? Okay. No. I tried, guys. All right, next up, Magister Dawngrass. So this was the Mage Hero card. So it originally gave +1 damage on the hero power when you honorably killed. They then buffed it to give +2 damage whenever you honorably killed with a hero power. And then Mage was too busted, so they nerfed it back to its original form with like +1. And so I guess the question we asked to the community was, do you want it rebuffed? So it feels weird to call it a revert because it was like buffed and then nerfed again. But basically, do you guys want it at +2 or at +1 on honorable kill for that Mage card?
I mean, the reason it was nerfed in standard is because like it single-handedly won grindy games. Those don't exist in wild, so what's the risk?
I'm actually like kind of fine where it's at. I think it's still like pretty decent. I don't know. I don't. This is one of the ones where I'm probably the more torn on out of anything.
Really, why?
Like I think the immediate effect is the same, right? So it's just about how much lethality it has in these sort of grindy matchups. I think like there is a world where Dawn pretty like quickly scales with things like Reckless Apprentice to all of a sudden being like a DLA deal 10. And it's not necessarily like the most fun win condition, I think. Like I think the hero power already dealing like 5 and 6 is already like a lot of lethality in those kind of matchups. So I don't really feel that strongly like it needs to be able to scale that fast. Because like in matchups where you don't need to grind out, it's not relevant. In matchups where you do need to grind out, it's just about smashing the hero power button every turn. And that's like not the most compelling game experience to me. So I don't really feel strongly about it, but yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. I don't know. It also feels like if you're at +1, I feel like, doesn't that give you more opportunities though to like honorably kill? Is it harder when you're at +2 versus +1 to set up the honorable kills?
At the same time, you because you need like far fewer, like often like you need like far fewer targets, right? Like you only need to be able to hit like 1 or 2 things rather than twice. So
to scale, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not expect this to be a controversial one, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, good conversations. Yeah. All right, you guys ready for this one? Let's talk about some Paladin cards. Let's start with Conviction, the 1 mana deal 6. It got nerfed to 2 mana deal 6. It also seems like the community is super polarized on this card as well. 56% of people want it back to 1, and 44% want to keep it at 2. I feel like I know what boats you guys fall in. Are you guys in the minority here?
Oh, yeah, I guess that is the minority. But yes, I mean, I for some reason I just like autocorrected the community's decision here and said no. In a world where Crab Rider is back, why would we want to revert this? And that's kind of my thing. I feel like Corb's rule is pretty sound. Where if it's seen play in Wild, even if it's not like a super popular card, then it's probably just good enough to keep it as is. And I think that Conviction, 1 mana Fireballs probably doesn't need to exist. I think the card is just fine as it is. I know you're not going to agree with that, Meowth, but
you might be surprised. I think at the point we are in Wild, as much as I loved Conviction and as much as I love Crab Rider, like I don't think we want to buff aggro decks just in general. Even though it's like, I know aggro paladin's not super popular, super good, but I just feel like if you want to do it, like buff Hand of a Dog, because that goes in a lot more variety of decks instead of Conviction. And I think I'm kind of just in the boat right now where it's like I don't think we need to buff aggro decks. I don't think the community wants that. So
speed is not what the meta needs. I agree wholeheartedly with that.
Yeah. It's kind of a toss-up, like again, because Conviction probably is like right on the borderline where it's not quite strong enough for Wild. But man, 1 mana version is very strong for Wild. So yeah, just with the Crab Rider revert, like I'm with you guys. Generally, like significantly buffing, like decks that are already highly competitive, especially like very fast decks. Yeah, probably not something I want.
For what it's worth, I wanted this unnerfed until they unnerfed Crab Rider for some reason last year, and then once they did that, I feel like there's no shot we ever get this back. I don't think they should have reverted Crab Rider.
Are you sure that's what happened? That's not the timeline, is it?
Yeah. Also, weren't you on the revert Crab Rider train?
No, I was not. I remember very specifically
one.
when we did this episode last year that I was like, "This is dangerous. We shouldn't have it." But whatever. It's okay.
Can we get
I
a
am in the
fact
same boat
checker?
as you guys.
Yeah,
We need
I'm gonna,
Politico on
yeah.
this.
All right, somebody go watch the episode because I'm not gonna go do that. But nobody expose me, please, even if I'm wrong, please, for my sake. But I'm in the same boat as you guys this year. I don't think we need Crap Rider, or sorry, Conviction Reverted, especially because we have Crap Rider. All right. Next up, we have Sword of the Fallen. So this is the secret tutoring weapon in Paladin. It originally released at 3 durability and very quickly got nerfed to 2 durability. It still sees a lot of play at 2 durability, so it's a little surprising to me to see almost 60% of the community wanting it reverted to 3 durability.
Does it see play?
It's good on aggro paladin list that I guess is not very good, but
yeah, I mean, I think this is probably as close as Conviction, right? Like it was pretty strong. Maybe because it was so long ago, I'm misremembering it, and it's because it doesn't kill you like Conviction does. It's a little bit less visceral, and I feel like that's why it's maybe a little bit more spread in favor of the reversion here. I think this would probably be a bit safer than Conviction, in my opinion. So I could go either way on this. I think that I'm not surprised it split. I think it would probably be fine. But yeah, I don't know. Probably not necessary though.
I'm here to be the bad guy. I'm putting my foot down. We are not reverting this. We cannot. Okay. So this card is only behind Call to Arms in performance in aggro paladin. Like, that's it. It's like the second best card in the mulligan. It's like one of the best, like second, third best draw win rate. The card is really good. Like you have it, you keep it, you play it, you're gonna win a lot of games. Let's not buff cards that are already elite in the format, is my general opinion.
Okay. I think that this is an issue with because like it's kind of a subtle card in terms of like it, because you don't like lose the game because somebody swings at you a couple times with a Sword of the Fallen, right?
it doesn't
or you don't
feel
like
you lose the game.
It doesn't feel like you lose the game, but like clearly it is hyper performing. So maybe I've just fallen into that trap. I haven't queued into aggro paladins in quite a while, so I've forgotten what it feels like to play against. But yeah, I'm willing to go pull back completely after that.
There's like some weirdness with Paladin recruit cards like this because obviously if you draw this, it means that you're not drawing your bad secrets. The same thing with like Call to Arms, right? So is the bias. But I mean, from everything I can tell, like the card has just been really, really good for a really long time. Like pulling Oh My Yogs and stuff in Redemption. It's like it is subtle because you don't really notice it as much, but I mean it does a lot in a lot of matchups. So I think it's easy to forget just how insane Sword was at 3. That card was mental when it first came out, and yeah, I just think it wasn't around long enough, and it also because we had things like Watch Post and Conviction, that I think it's easy to like put the blame on those, compared to the Sword. But Sword was crazy.
Yeah,
and it is still really good. So.
I was about to say it's still seen so much play ever since. Like I got nerfed like a week and a half in, and it's seen so much play since then. Right, like I think it's 100%. Should stay where it's at. All right, last paladin card here, Light Forged Cariel. So this is the paladin hero card that like equips the weapon where you take half less damage, and then you guys know what Cariel does. 2/3 of the community wants it reverted back to 7 mana. I don't know how I feel about this, so I'm gonna let you guys try to convince me about your opinions because I'm not sure what side of the fence I lean on here or land on here.
I think it's the Corb rule, right? Like it's strong enough to see play now. Like why there aren't a lot of like super strong decks that it's in right now, but like when we were in the Renathal metagame, it was absolutely a playable card if we ever return to something like that. It could be again. I think that it's not quite like Guff situation, but a little bit similar. I think it's probably just fine as is.
Yeah, I'm like these hero cards, man. They got me torn. Same with like Dawn, where I'm kind of just like, I don't know. Cariel's very strong, but it's very strong in like slower paladin archetypes for the most part. Like it wasn't good in Mech Paladin at 7. I can't recall exactly how it performed in aggro paladin. Like I don't remember exactly, but like it's obviously a much stronger card in things like like Reno Paladin, archetypes like that. And so it's kind of like, if that gets a boost, how bad is it? I don't know. I just remember, I do remember this being busted in like Handbuff Paladin and things like that. So again, a bit undecided. I would probably lean towards keep it as is. But I'm not going to fight anyone if they want to revert it.
I think something that's kind of underrated about Cariel too is just like the relentlessness of having a weapon that swings every turn and deals 2 damage every turn, and like having that come online a turn later honestly is kind of a good thing in my opinion. I like, the more I think about it, the more I just am fine with it at 8.
Yeah, I guess when I was thinking about this, I was like, it supports slow archetypes, right? And I think that's something, when they're looking at the reversions, I want to lean towards supporting the slower archetypes rather than the fast ones. But then I remember just like, okay, well, if you're playing like an aggro deck, and the moment they play a Cariel, it's just like game over, right? And like those types of swingy cards, we were talking about this earlier, like it literally ends the game. And so, as much as I like those slower paladin archetypes, like I'm still on the fence. Like, we just had this conversation. I don't know. Like, I want to support those archetypes, but I also like, it's kind of miserable to play against. So
I think there are healthier ways to support those archetypes.
Yeah, I think that's fair actually. Let's keep it nerfed in my like. Again, that would be my final vote. I would say keep nerfed.
It's surprising. We're going against a lot of community sentiment. Are we the bad guys? Are we the ones that are out of touch?
We're always the bad guys, okay?
All right. So Priest did not get any good cards 2 years ago because they did not have any cards nerfed.
That's insane. That's insane. Going through an entire year rotation with no nerfed cards. Like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I don't know. Did Priest suck in Standard? Like, I don't remember.
Well, we're going back to.
I feel like, wasn't it Warrior before Warrior was Warrior? Like,
well, I'm trying to remember the timeline here because we had like Baron's Priest heading into like before Stormwind, and then I'm trying to remember like what else it did. It did like Naga Priest things. It did like Blessed Priest things. I guess like Radiant Elemental and candidates like that are just core cards. So I don't know.
Yeah, because like
not the Radiant's been nerfed yet.
Yet soon, TM. Because like Questline Priest wasn't like a super busted oppressive deck, and then
the hero card as well. I guess that's a big part of it. Is like most hero cards or questlines got nerfed, and then because Priest ones didn't, then
they're not on the list.
It doesn't have candidates. Yeah.
All right. Well, Priest mains, I'm sorry, you guys don't get any toys this year. All right, Rogue. Let's talk about Octobot. This used to be a 2-mana 1/4 with Frenzy that would discount your entire hand by 1. There used to be a lot of shenanigans you used to do with like Pen Flingers and Shadow Steps and things like that to do some gross things in Rogue. That being said, Rogue has evolved since then. They got Sinstone Graveyards and Drakas, and Pillager is a real deck now. Because of all of that, do you think that Octobot could go back from 3 mana to 2? The community thinks it could. 57% of them.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the community on this one. I think that the mana cheat, the kind of like the quest line from Demon Hunter, the mana cheat that Octobot offers is relatively inoffensive, as well as interesting. It's kind of just like a cheaper, harder to activate Emperor Thorson. That like, with a Shadow Steps aside, with a cap on the amount that it can reduce your hand. So like, yeah, I think that this is a good candidate for a nerf version, honestly. I don't know. I'm surprised that it's so light in terms of the voting. It's barely over half. I would have expected more.
I really hope they do this one. I'm very fearful that they won't, because mana cheating, they're just like concerned about that, or community sentiments apparently like very, very like split. But yeah, I really hope so. I mean, I don't think Octo did very much the first go around in Wild at all. Like, it wasn't played in any of the real combo decks. Like, I saw very fringe play. And yeah, I mean, it's opens up possibilities for decks that I personally enjoy a lot. So there's obviously significant bias there, but I really hope they do that.
Yeah, I worry that a lot of the community sentiment is like they just went through this Miracle Rogue Stone and they don't want to risk going back. But I don't know that Octobot, especially since we have Graveyard that's been nerfed twice and a 5-mana Draka. Like I don't know how much an Octobot's gonna bring back that archetype, and so I don't know that.
Well, the thing about Octo is that you need to have like 8 or something enablers, right? Like you need the significant enablers to be built around. You can't just like throw it in Miracle Rogue and call it a day, like with just Ghostly Strike. So it requires like a deck building cost. And that's like why I never really saw playing things like Pillager and things like that either. So
Yeah, I hope they do this because I think OG OTZ Rogue, the like value tempo Rogue that he built, was a lot of fun. And if we get something like that back as a good Rogue deck, I think I'd be super excited. So I'm down for Octobot, especially because it might also enable the next card, which is Garrote. And so this used to be a combo deck in Standard alongside Octobot, where you would shuffle bleeds into your opponent's decks, and then you would gain spell damage, and they would then die, or into your decks rather. You would draw cards, and then they would die. It got nerfed from 3 bloods to 2 bloods, so it significantly reduced the damage cap. But I do think it was a super cool combo deck in Standard. Potentially something that has a lot of nostalgia attached to it, and so I know it's a combo deck, which is a little bit scary and dangerous when we're talking about reversions. But are you guys kind of on board with Garrote maybe going back to its original form?
Yeah, I mean, Garrote and the archetype and the deck associated with it is a big part of why I was kind of hopeful that you would revert Octobot as well. Like, these kind of go hand in hand. Neither of them were really big offenders in Wild, even when they were running rampant in Standard. It's an interesting play pattern. It allows people that really liked the deck when it was in Standard to kind of come back, kind of similar to like an Il'gynoth Demon Hunter we talked about last year. Even things like a Patron Warrior of old. It's like a really high skill cap deck that people liked playing, didn't necessarily like playing against, but was never really strong in our format. So I think it's just fine.
Yep, totally on board with the Garrote.
Yeah, I think more skill cap decks like that, like Garrote, rather than even Shamans and Secret Mages and Pirate Rogues, good for the format. So even if it's combo deck, I'm down. All right, sketchy information. So this is the one that would draw a Death Rattle card and then trigger the Death Rattle. It's got nerfed from 3 to 4 because of mines, and I think it should stay at 4 mana. Corp's giving me big eyes.
The numbers get like mixed up. What happened here?
Nope, 40% of people want this card back. I don't think people played against enough Mine Rogue in Wild. Look, the numbers don't lie, man. The numbers don't lie. That is what it says.
Mine Rogue could stay dead. that can
please.
stay where it is. Like, I don't want to deal with that ever again. I don't want to deal with any. What's the new card called? The 4/4, like any
illusionist or the
I don't want to deal with new illusionist stuff either. Like, this can stay where it is. Thank you.
Yeah, same. This is one of the ones where like the collateral damage from a standard nerf was actually to the benefit of the Wild format. Like, and we do not need to undo that. Like, this is problematic and not just Mine Rogue. It was like becoming an issue with the Cobalt Illusionist, which is or the Scourge Illusionist. It was an issue with the Cobalt Illusionist in the past. It's an issue with the weapon. We just do not need this card at 3 mana again.
The Scourge Illusionist as well is like it doesn't really do the same thing that Violet did right now. But man, that's like 1 minion away from just doing something incredibly equally stupid.
Yes.
What? 40% of you? Okay, I'm not. Okay, sorry.
Come on, Corb. You can't patronize the viewers just yet.
Wild is meant to be wild.
God. All right. Related to that, let's talk about Forsaken Lieutenant, because they both got nerfed at the same time to kill Mine Rogue in Standard. 64% of people want it back as the 2 mana 2/2. I don't even know what it's at right now, because this is the one that like became a copy of a Death Rattle when you played.
I think it's a 3 mana 2/2. I don't think they buffed the stats.
Okay, so 3 mana 2/2. I don't think this saw play in anything outside of Mine Rogue in Wild. I guess the question is, do we want it back at 2 mana to maybe enable some Death Rattle shenanigans in Wild, or do we want to just kind of keep it dead because we don't want the sketchy information decks to be a thing?
Did this even see play in Mine Rogue and Wild? Like, I feel like
I
just
saw it
the
every
weapon.
once in a while, but yeah.
I feel like the weapon just did the same thing but better. So I don't think that there's much harm in reverting this.
Yep. Not a problem from my end.
Okay. All right. So the first time I think in a while that we're kind of aligning with the community here. All right. Shadowcrafter Scabs. So this is the hero card. Got nerfed from 7 mana to 8 because it would enter and bounce all the creatures. So it was like a vanish on a hero card that made you 4/2s that also discounted all the hero power. 77% of people want it back at 7 mana. 23% want it back at 8. How do you guys feel about this?
I don't know. The hero cards are tough, man. I feel like this is probably a little bit too good at 7, and maybe a little bit too bad at 8. So I don't know. I'm surprised. I'm surprised it's this. Like, I would expect this to be a little bit closer than something like sketchy information. Like, I feel like it's not clear to me what the correct choice is. I don't know if there's really a deck that wants this card in Wild. I guess it's limiting factor, but it just did so much. It basically did. It was 7 mana, deal 8 to face, clear the board. Like, that's a good card.
What was the original one again? Was it just that? It was just the mana change, right? That was it. Yeah. I don't know. Like Roffle said, the hero cards, they keep getting me. Whether it's about Carriel or Dawn or this one, like, I don't know. It was very, very good at 7. And then it kind of moved completely unplayable at 8. So it's like, I don't know. This one, I probably feel more strong. Like I think Carriel can stay. Like, that's the one I feel the most strongly about is Carriel at 8. But I think Dawn and Scabs are most open to these two being reverted. So probably like I'm in the middle, probably leaning slightly towards revert. But yeah, it's tough.
I'm the part of the card that scares me is the battle cry of bouncing on, like, the vanish part is the part that's a little bit scary to me because, like, even if it's not good, like, I don't want to give the combo rogue decks like access to a 7 mana like pseudo ice block effect, right? Where, like, I'd no longer get hit by any of the minions. I don't know that it would see play in those. It's probably too slow, but I just don't want to risk it because that's not like it's nobody likes having their board vanished, and so I don't know that it's something that we want to risk bringing back. Like, what's the benefit, I guess, of it coming back at 7? Like, what archetypes does it support? Because I don't think any of the Miracle Rogue decks want it, like the discount part.
Yeah, so the idea would be that it doesn't push things like Pillager and Mine Rogue and the hyper-fast combo rogues, and it doesn't push aggro rogue, but it could push things like Reno Rogue or, God forbid, Mill Rogue. Things like that are probably a lot more up its alley. Or Garrote Rogue, you know, bringing back all these Garrote cards. That's another one.
Would you play this in Garrote? I guess you could, right?
Yeah, you did at the time. I'm pretty sure you did at the time.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. I'm still on the fence. I don't know. I am scared about this card. I think more than I am something like Dawn Grasp or even Carriel. Just because that battle cry is, like, it can be pretty punishing and not very fun. And so, yeah. All right. Well, apparently it's very, a lot of the community wants it back. So bring it back and then we can nerf it if we need to. All right. Let's talk about the most nerfed card in... No? Okay. Let's talk about the most nerfed card in Hearthstone history, and that is Wildpaw Null. All right, so I'm not even going to go through the history here, but basically, it has bounced between 5 mana and 6 mana, 3/5 and 4/5 stats, and being discounted by Maestra and not. And so, community was like pretty close between leaving it as is, where it's a 5 mana 3/5 that doesn't get discounted by Maestra, and keeping it as a 5 mana 3/5 that does get discounted by Maestra. Very, very close there. And so there are some people, 21% of you guys are crazy and want it back as a 5 mana 4/5 that was discounted by Maestra. So again, there are a whole lot of versions of this card I guess which one do you guys want to see back?
Probably the one we have right now. Just keep it as is. I think that, it's not playable, but I feel like it's closer in line with like the intention of what the card was when it was printed, like as a card. Like it was meant to be reduced by spells that you or cards that you burgle from another class, not like weird things like Potion Belt. I think the Potion Belt and to a lesser extent the Shroud of Concealment interaction single-handedly like makes me not want the Maestra interaction involved in this card at all.
I'm so biased. I'm gonna say like let's revert it to 5 mana 3/5, but discounted by Maestra. So yeah, I'm saying yes to the Thief Rogue shenanigans of the Thief Miracle Rogue stuff. Part of that's because we have seen like the location nerfed at this stage. And in theory, I would say that like taking the first few turns off in wild should become more and more punishing over time, while you discount stuff. But I don't know. It's very hard for me. I feel very biased on this one. Like it was one of my favorite decks ever, and so it's kind of hard for me to separate things.
All right, as unbiased as I can be, I think it supports like the Miracle Rogue archetype, right? It also supports still, even if it does get discounted by Maestra, the Thief Rogue shenanigans. Plus, there's the whole nostalgia factor of it spent 2 years in standard being discounted by Maestra. So, like, I think it's something that they will revert and probably should revert. And if it's also good against aggro decks, right? Like Miracle Rogue used to be, like, is that necessarily a bad thing as well?
So Miracle Rogue, like, I very torn because it was like borderline pretty damn oppressive, but we never really saw it with Null and like this version of Location. I think, or like
they both got nerfed at the same time, I believe.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to figure out exactly where things would lie like that.
I'm generally just because the location got nerfed for what it's worth. Like I think if the location was original form, I don't know that I would want it back, but
yeah, I mean, I think the deck is really fun and stuff, and so like I just kind of want stuff that I enjoy because right now I'm not enjoying like even Shaman and things like that. So yeah, it's a tough one, but I totally understand Roffle's point about the initial intention of the card and kind of like it was so powerful, like with the Maestra interaction as well. Like it's so broken.
Yeah. Yeah. To be fair, people have been making like the soul of the card argument for like 2 years in standard, and it didn't get changed. Like the majority of people that know the card know it from the Maestra interaction, even if it is like unintuitive and things like that. Like if you're gonna be playing the card in wild, you're gonna be playing it hopefully because of the Maestra. I don't know. I am in the boat of bring it back to the 5 mana 3/5 form. The crazy 20% of people that wanted it back as a 4/5. Ooh,
I'm not that biased.
Oh gosh. All right, let's move into Shaman here. Let's talk about Perpetual Flame. So you guys might not have seen this card because it has been unplayable for the past year and a half since it got nerfed. But this used to be the 1 mana fire spell that said deal 3 damage to random enemy minion. If it died, recast this or repeat this with Overload 1. And so you could theoretically clear full boards, be overloaded, and then cast, I don't even remember the name of the overdraft, I think, to like unlock your mana crystals and things like that. That was kind of the whole deck around like Frog Shaman and the quest, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I also think it was just like an insanely strong anti-aggro tool in the early days of like slower Shaman decks, right? Stuff like Big Shaman really like this card, and so I am with the 71% of the community of bringing it back to 1 mana.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that we talked about potential things that benefit slow decks that are a little bit healthier than Cariel. I think this is one such example. So just, it's fine.
Does it benefit slow decks? It benefits Questline Shaman, which we'll get to. But I don't think you really play this in normal slower archetypes for the most part, right?
I mean, you were at the time. Was that before Flurgle Talks?
I don't really remember. I don't really remember like if whether you ripped this in like Shadow Walk and stuff.
I don't remember if you played it in Shadowwalk Shaman, but I knew you played it in Big Shaman because like you couldn't play Fligrotox on that deck, and so I know you played that, but I don't remember. But also, Frog Shaman shenanigans aside, because we'll talk about the quest and we'll talk about Drekthar later. Like, would you play this in current day like Shadowwalk Shaman?
You skip a turn, like it's a lot
Yeah.
of.
Probably
It's a
not
big
without an
penalty.
overdraft.
Yeah.
So is this really supporting slower decks then? And it's
That's
just
what I'm kind of
supporting the
wondering. I'm
quest?
like,
Yeah.
is it supporting or is it just supported the quest line? And so if it's just the quest line, I'm kind of like, But like, I will also say revert. It's just I'm definitely not I'm not nearly as definite as like you guys said to be able to community seems to be. I'm very much like this is quite close to a hero card for me, where I'm like, are we sure we want this? But yeah,
Okay, how about we get this back, but then we don't revert the quest line?
no, don't spoil it, man.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the quest line. Let's talk about Command the Elements. So this is the one where you would play a bunch of Overload cards, and then your reward would be Brucon, which I believe it's each time you cast a spell, it casts twice. And so there used to be a combo deck. We kept alluding to Frog Shaman, where you would like draw through your deck, turbo out the quest, play it, and then kill your opponent with burn spells. 77% of people want this thing reverted back to its original form. It did get nerfed, I think, a little bit in the third step to just requiring another Overload card. Yeah. How do you guys feel about this one? Community really wants it back.
Was it ever clear that like the questline version was even the better iteration of Frog Shaman? Like, couldn't you just kill him without spending 5 mana on Burkhan?
I think it depended on what era we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I think it depends on like whether we had Bioluminance and then whether we had Drekthar and whether we had like and so on. There was a lot of iterations of Questline Shaman for a while.
Right.
Or
Bio
Frog
changed things for sure. Because you could just spike so much damage off it. Like you didn't have to invest in so many like 2-face damage spells. So it was more of a combo deck than just like a burn deck. I don't know. The quest line still seems relatively easy to complete. I think it's probably okay as it is now. I think honestly the biggest hurdle is just like again the 5 mana on Burkhan, not necessarily, especially when you're overloading yourself to get there, not necessarily like the requirement of the different stages of the quest line. So that said, I just don't think we need to take the risk to revert it. I think it's probably fine.
I'm gonna say revert, because I think that the final stage isn't really necessarily the problematic aspect of the deck, right? Like if the deck is a problem, it's more to do with the not final version, right? It's about like the first 2 stages and just like killing the opponent on like turn 4, turn 5. If you play the quest reward and then you kind of go over the top, I think that's kind of not that different than current like questline hunter and things like that. So I'm fine with this one. So despite my reservations, I am on board for both the questline and the perpetual flame, but there'll be one final piece, spoiler, which I'm probably not going to be on board with.
Yeah, I think my hesitation with the questline shaman is I could very much see a world where it turns into something like Pillager, where it like can maybe consistently kill you on turn 4, turn 5.
But that doesn't change with the
that's what I'm saying.
Right?
Like I don't think that the quest is the reason that that's going to happen. And even if it is, like the way you hit it, I think is like by touching the frog more than touching like the quest line. But that's a conversation for a different world. I also don't know. I also just frick quest lines, man. We don't need to bring them back. Like I don't want them back. I don't want them to be an omnipresent thing in every game of WoW that I play. So like even if it is okay, my biases, you were talking about your rogue biases, I just don't want them back. Like I don't want to see them, and so even the mage quest line, I was like, I know it's not good, but I don't know that I want it back. And so I think it would be fine, but personally I would vote to keep it as is. All right. I'm going to set the next one out because I'll be biased. No, I'm just kidding. Snowfall Guardian. Yeah, I can't believe they printed it at the 5 mana 3/3 stat increase. And I don't think people were talking very much about this card when it got released. And then it got nerfed to 6 mana 3/3, and now we're at a 6 mana 5/5 that no longer gains any stats. And I think it's actually perfectly fine and playable and good, in in the right metas as a 6 mana 5/5. It's not like an auto include, but it probably shouldn't be because of how toxic it can be to play against. I'm perfectly fine keeping it as is. There's a crazy 7% of people out there that want it back to its OG form. I'm just gonna put that out there. I am not one of them. Okay.
What I'm learning is that it's like every card, every class has this like little the same percentage. It's the same thing we saw with Alignment Druid. So like if you go like Alignment Druid, guess who said OG revert? 7.5%. It's the exact same percentage.
So, I think it's the same people.
It's either the same people or it's like every class has these like stands that just main it and they just want every single card reverted.
Yeah. This card can't get reverted. As much as I love them.
It's fine where it's at. Like it's fine.
Yeah, it's playable. It's good. It's okay where it's at. No changes. No notes.
I just needed to make sure it was clear that I was not one of those 7.5%. Okay.
I'm proud of you.
Shocking us today, Meowth, with the snowfall, the conviction. Like, what's going on?
You're truly you're an entirely new man.
I was in the boat of the 6 mana version for a while. As somebody who has been tortured by the meta, I am here to make the format as inclusive as possible.
Aww.
Remove all the unfun things, okay? Even if I enjoyed them. Granite Forgeborn. Speaking of things that, were playable, this was never one of them. Which is a little bit sad. No, I'm not going to lie to you. Poor elementals. They suck. It used to be a 4/5 that discounted elementals in your, I believe it's hand and deck. It is now a 4/4 that discounts elementals in your hand and deck. It's a very powerful effect. I don't think the stat increase or decrease has anything to do with the playability of the card, so bring it back as a 4/5. There is literally zero harm that could be done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's move into Warlock cards. You guys ready for this first one? Let's talk about Touch of the Nathrazim. This thing on release used to heal you for 4. It now only heals you for 3. We are within 3 percentage points when it comes to the community about this for some reason. I don't understand the reason, but 49% of you guys want this to heal 4 again.
Y'all know that the Warlock questline is coming back, right? Like, I don't know how it's going to look, but like, this is a strong card right now. Why are we even considering reverting this?
It's a very light change. I guess that's like the big part of it is that the general idea being it's such a small change and buff stuff that's good against aggro, I guess is like the main philosophy. Again, for me, just keep it as is. Like, it's a strong card. It's like seems universal play in like every slower combo Warlock deck. So just keep it.
Yeah. The whole argument we made of it, like, it's seeing play now, don't revert it. And this is like the epitome of that. Like, it is probably one of Warlock's strongest cards, as is. So, all right. Ruined Mithril Rod. This thing used to cost 3 mana. 6.5% of you guys want it back at 3 mana. 29% of you guys want it 4 mana, and then 65% of you guys want it to stay as is. Honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to them just like turning this to 8 mana and nuking it, because this card is gross. It still is gross even at 5 mana. The decks that it goes in, the combo decks don't really exist right now, but oh no. I hate you, Corb, but please defend yourself.
Put it to 4.
No,
Put it to
no
4.
way, dude. No.
Put it to 4.
Here's the thing. No. Actually, I could just...
okay, fair enough, actually.
But, like, I feel like maybe because we're at this very moment, Warlock does not have... Warlock decks that run Ruined Mithril Rod does not have the breathing room to play a 5 mana Rod. Like, we're maybe giving it a little bit too much slack, but like, it was a good playable card at 5 mana at various times. If things ever slow down again, we do not want this at 4. We absolutely do not want it at 3. So I think 5 is just fine.
Yeah. Devil's Advocate, they have like nuked a bunch of combo Warlock decks over the past like year or so.
There's always more.
They always find a way.
Mechathune Lock still exists. It's, unless they do something about Cataclysm, that's still like a concern.
Uh, 4? Can I convince you on 4 mana? Okay, so
I'll give you 4.5 if we round up to 5.
okay, that sounds fair. Um, yeah, the okay, so like currently 5 mana weapon pass, it's kind of pretty bad.
Hmm.
Like the combo decks kill on 5 or 6. The aggro decks kill
Hmm.
you if you try and pass on turn 5. Um, so I think Mithrod helps like break. It helps like push the combo stuff that theoretically shouldn't be like killing on turn 6. Um, turn 5 or turn 6, right? Like the fastest combo decks right now. So it's a little bit slower inherently because you have to take the turn off and things like that. Um, so I don't know. Like I just think it would probably push archetypes that I'm more interested in playing than the aggro Walkfest and things like that we have going on. It promotes like drawing a whole bunch of stuff, which I like. I don't I don't know. I think Roffle might be dead on where he's saying that don't get too caught up in the moment and just think about things a little bit more long term. But what if I only want to live in the moment, Ruffle? What if I'm pissed off and tilted and I want to play my Mithrod?
Then, when all of the Matt London changes that save the format actually come to fruition, then we'll all be directing our ire at the 4 mana, um, Ruin Mithril Rod, and so you can be the face of that ire and that anger once that does happen.
And
Are you willing to?
I think that's very fair. Like I think that given if we assume that there are actually like decisions going to be made to slow down the pace of the format, sure. In current present day wild, I don't think it's a concern. So it's kind of a
No.
little bit like we'll see. But
Yeah.
I hear where you're coming from, both of you
It's
guys.
it's it's a hopeful non-revert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think 5 mana pass as well for the effect that this gives you. It discounts like close to 20 mana, right? For 5 mana. Even if you do have to pass on 5, like I think that's still like that's acceptable. I'm okay with
Yeah.
it staying at 5, especially in the class that has a reverted Touch of the Nathrazim healing you for 4 and defiles and drain
It's not
souls and plague of flames.
reverted.
Like I'm okay if you have to spend
Right.
5 mana on this thing.
And especially when you have those tools to set it up, and you have like a Tamsin just coming right behind it to like clean up after the fact. So like, I think it's just fine.
Especially if we get questline reverted and you got like the expired merchant into Hand Gul'dan like turbo fatigue thing that we used to do. Like I don't know though.
Oh, remind me of
Oh,
that.
can we talk about the quest line?
Well, I was gonna bring it up after this, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. First of all, Room at the Rod, keep it at 5. I can't believe this thing got printed at 3 mana. It still baffles me. All right, no. All right. I was just gonna touch on it where we are also getting 2-1 bans. This is like the first year that we're gonna get cards that were banned that are now rotating. And so just remember that when they initially made the bans, their philosophy was when they rotate, we are going to unban them, right, and then change them to fit the current state of the format. Okay. It is important to note that we never actually got to play with like the twice nerfed or third time it got nerfed questline where it was at 888 for all 3 of the stages. It's important to note that. And then we also have Stealer Souls getting unbanned as well. But that did eventually get nerfed to 6 for standard. So I didn't put them in the poll for the community votes because we don't really have any idea what they're going to do with the cards, right? Because theoretically they're going to rework them. Or I guess maybe just leave it as is. So I guess we can just like open it up for these because I know I didn't ask the community, but Demon Seed, let's start with that one. I guess would you guys be okay with it coming back to its current state at 888 for all 3 of those stages?
I don't think so. I don't. Was 888 where it was when it got banned?
Yeah, so it got nerfed for
Yeah.
standard, but at the same time they
Right.
just went ahead and banned it because they were like,
Okay.
eh.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to think about this. I don't know how it would stand in current Hearthstone. I would lean towards like not even taking a risk. Again, just like we don't need another Kael'thas situation, so maybe over nerf it, but I don't know how you nerf it, to be honest, other than like slowing down the quest completion so that it can get bullied by aggro and or like disrupted once it's in hand. So 10 10 10. 15, 15, 15. I don't care. Like I that's not. I like throwing darts at a board at this point, right? Like we don't know what the decision is going to be. Um, we don't know if or how Renathal is going to like interact with how this deck plays. It's really rough. And then there's still like the crystallizer issue, and journeying through the quest line. Like there's a lot of concerns with this card still. So
I'm just gonna also put out that we also now have Sea Devil Gigafin for that sweet 8
oh,
damage.
good God. Yeah, that's a big one.
We also have potentially unnerved Renathal.
I wouldn't expect that, but
I'm throwing out things, you know.
I know the Stinger Gigafin is pretty gross. Yeah, this probably needs some more touching up before it gets released into Wild.
All right, Corb, I know you have a differing opinion. Go ahead.
Yeah, my hot take is that I think you could just unban this as is, put it in Wild, and it would suck. Just gonna throw that out there. So the thing is, right, is that we never like the history of Questline Warlock. We saw it with Flesh Giant at 8 and Dark Lair, and then those cards got nerfed, and then we pivoted over, and we're gonna go play Fatigue version with 3 mana Rod. And then we nerf the questline, we ban the questline at the same time, and then it isn't until later that we nerf Rod. So like, we never saw the deck, 1, in its fully nerfed version, and 2, like we never saw it without like 3 mana Rod, because obviously like 5 mana Rod isn't doing nearly the same thing that we were doing at the time. So like, how do we envision this deck going, like play pattern wise in Wild? I envision getting smoked down like crazy by things like Secret Mage. At the time, it was like a 50-50 matchup with like Shadow Priest, and this deck has only gotten worse over time, and the aggro decks have only gotten faster, whether we're talking about Secret Mage, Pirate Rogue, Shadow Priest, things like that. Like, I can't imagine that's a fun matchup. We've lost Rod, the quest's been nerfed, it's going to lose to Disco, it's going to lose to Pillager, it's going to lose to Quest Mage. I don't understand, like, where the good matchups are hypothetically coming from, and so to me, it's kind of just like a Quest Hunter, right? Where I'm gonna have to play my 5 mana 7/7 at some point, except it's even slower because you can't really tempo with the hero power on the same turn as damage. So I'm gonna be taking all this damage. I'm meant to take like 18 damage, basically, because then I heal up at 6. Take 18 self-inflicted, play my 5 mana 7/7, and I'm meant to kill them somehow as well after that. Like, I'm just not understanding what the matchup spread looks like, how the games play out, where this is remotely playable. I think you could unban it, put in Wild, it would suck. That might be too hot. that's a hot take.
I don't know. I'm being convinced. Like I feel like that's a pretty fair assessment. Like especially without the buffer of an unnerfed. My concern is just like a strong Giants lock with this card in it coming back. And
Flesh Giant costs 10. Like it costs 10 mana now.
I forgot. I'm gonna be honest with you. I forgot that had happened.
So, like, we never even. I think that Flesh got 10, Demoncy got banned at the same time as well. Like, so, like, and the Giants version wasn't even that good. Like, because everyone, well, it was all right, but everyone kind of pivoted over to that Fatigue version. But again, that deck only really worked because of 3 mana Mithril Rod, and then like you'd play Tams and then play Cataclysm and then play all your hand equal hands that blow up on 6, and it's like that doesn't work anymore. So it's like, when are we OTKing? When's the kill? It's a turn 8. It's like pretty slow.
Yeah, I guess to play devil's advocate for a couple things, like the whole conversation we had about Ruined Mithril Rod, right? Where like in this hypothetical fairy tale world where they go and slow down the format a ton, right? And take out all of the pillager rogues and things like that. Is there a world where this ends up being strong, right? And then there's the other aspect of like, it was also just like the casual player base. Does this become another sort of big priest? Because the casual player base loves to play their slower, their Reno decks or their greedy piles, and this has kind of that issue where like you play the quest reward and then there's just like nothing you can do to beat that, right? Even if it's not very good, it's probably not a very fun play experience for the majority of the casual player base. And so even if it, I understand completely where you're coming from, and I think from a competitive aspect at like High Legend, you probably could just do unnerf it in current Wild and it'd be completely fine. But like, I wonder if they do it, because of like the play pattern issues for the majority of the casual player base. Like I don't know how much they're going to take.
There's also, I don't know how much this is going to play into their decision, but like the question of optics, like if you can just release it now and it's not a powerhouse, then why has it been banned this whole time? So like what stopped them from doing that like 3 months ago if they're going to do it in next month when the new set comes out? Like that's legitimately should bring up some questions in that case.
Well, I mean, like, why? Because they don't have people reassessing the wild format every 3 months.
No, I know.
Oh, yes. Now it's time. But no, I think you're dead on. Where it does raise the question of like, wait, why did we have to wait for this? But yeah, can you imagine playing Secret Mage against Demon Seed? Like, good lord.
I can't imagine playing Secret Mage in general.
Okay, that's yeah. That's
you used to be one of them, Roffle. You used to be.
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, back when it ran Firelands Portal. Don't be absurd.
But no, I do hear your point about the inevitability, because it probably is like the most inevitable archetype that you can't interact with in theory, because you can't theater if they combo it off and then play at the same turn, you can't theater the reward, or the same way that you could with even something like Mechathune, right? And it's probably the theoretical like most damage questline reward by the time you get to like the late game. So I hear what you're saying about that, but it's also like, yeah, I don't know. There's other stuff that completely beat like ultra grind first decks, I suppose. Like, is Mechathune something that is that problematic, like, or Quest Priest? Like, I don't know. Jade Idol, just because like I don't know, like, does Jade Idol need to be touched because of this and that? Like, I don't know. Whether they should or shouldn't do this, I think I just want to kind of point out that I think that it wouldn't be good anyway. No. That's kind of the take that I want to get across.
I think both of us would agree with you about that, but I think there's just like the whole other side of that where, I mean, maybe
and that'll come up in another quest reward soon that we talk about.
For what it's worth, I compare it a lot to Caverns Below, where when that was coming up for rotation, I think all three of us were just like, there's no shot that they do this, right? Like, why would they do it? Because it's just like not an enjoyable play pattern, and like there's no reason to risk it. And then they went and they did it anyways. And,
I was fine with them doing that.
Okay,
well, I said it wasn't going to be a problem.
It ended up being a problem for what it's worth, but there was like that one meta. I compare it a lot to that though, right? Where like even if it isn't going to be like the most powerful thing, right? Like the play pattern concerns is like the big thing for me for the majority of the casual player base, right? Where I compare it to like a Big Priest as well, where that deck has not been good. It hasn't been good for a long time, but it's still like a miserable play experience for the majority of people. And so I don't know. I'm on the fence. Like I don't know.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I would quibble a little bit about the play experience thing, and you kind of almost convinced me even more so to bring it back when you mentioned Questro, because I'm like, it's actually kind of harmless.
Damn it, sabotage my own argument.
But yeah, I don't know. We spent a lot of time talking about this one.
Yeah, I mean, okay. The other card that's getting unbanned is Stealer's Souls. I got nerfed to 6 mana. Does it do anything in Wild at 6 mana? Do we want to bring it back to 4? What do we want to do with that?
Doesn't it just allow you to die with a 6 mana 2/6 in hand?
It's a 4/6 now.
Oh, it's a 4/6.
I
don't know. Turn 6 seems pretty slow. I forget. What were you doing? You're blood blooming into like a bunch of card draw or something. I forget how it even worked.
You would play it and then play like the immune card, and then you would plot twist into like
that's
a whole new hand, and then you could draw through.
Yeah, that's an 11 mana combo.
Wait, what does the text say? Can't you just like smash that all out on like turn 6?
No, because it's only cards
you have to. You have to draw into the immune.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like a
I don't know.
thing.
Like this is kind of a weird thing where it's like balance. It's very clearly not a concern, but I have other gameplay issues with it in terms of like the fundamentally breaking the game aspect, like the Didn't we
Yeah.
have like a whole bunch of like mechanic and like animation problems with
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, there
I
was
think
the APM thing with the like the Mechathune version to get through all the animations and stuff. So
Yeah, I think we could probably just again release this, and I think this would be less risky than the quest line just releasing it as is. Um, but maybe to future proof it or create or eliminate some of those concerns, maybe just make it like the first card you draw per turn or something like that. Make it like a beach rug type thing. Like I don't think it needs to exist, to be honest with you, as like
Yeah.
in the way that it did.
yeah, I think play pattern's the big concern there. All right, let's move into. We talked a lot about Warlock. Let's move into Warrior here. I feel like we're gonna talk a lot about the one Warrior card that's getting reverted, and that is Raid the Docks, which is the Pirate Warrior questline, the Juggernaut. So this card's been nerfed a million times as well. So it started off requiring 3 pirates and then 2 and then 2, and then got nerfed to 3/3/2, and then its final form at 3/3/3. The community seems a little bit split on all of these as well. So 42.5% want it to stay as is. 33.5 want that middle ground of 3/3/2 when it comes to the requirements, and then 24% of the community wants it back in its OG form, back to 3/2/2. And I know the two of you guys are split on your feelings about this card. So I guess Roffle, do you want to go first? Do you want this back?
No, of course not. Like this is the one where I will freely admit my bias. This card made me miserable for a very long time, and I don't care that it's not going to be strong, even if you revert it or halfway revert it. I don't care. I leave it as is. It's fine. We don't need to make questline go back to a questline metagame.
I've kind of trolled a lot with this card. The big concern that I have with it is that if you try to make it remotely playable at competitive ranks, then you completely annihilate half the population on ladder. So it's kind of like almost unrevertible to me, where like either the card does nothing, like you buff it and it does nothing, in which case like okay great, you buff it and you make it too strong, okay you did bad, or you buff it and you make it slightly like tier 3 at legend. If it's tier 3 at legend, it's probably like tier 1 oppressively horrible at like bronze through gold. So there's not really a middle ground where you can kind of hit with this card. So like even though I have no problem with the actual play pattern of Pirate Warrior, like I'm fine with it. It's one of the least offensive meta decks, like top tier decks that we've had in my opinion. It doesn't really matter because it's probably not going to influence my experience that much, but if you make it influence my experience a little bit, it probably is so bad for everyone else. So I say either leave it or maybe just the first stage if you just want to throw Warrior bone. But that's probably about it.
Yeah. Damn, that was not what I was expecting out of Corb.
Well, I mean, I've been convinced, to be fair, by like talking about it more and more over time, and just like the idea that everyone else's experiences also matter, not just my experience.
Oh, I'm proud of you too. Let's go. Yeah, part of me is like, yes, bring back a new archetype, or I guess an old archetype. Like, support it, right? Like, Pirate Warrior is like a core identity for the WoW format. But also it's a quest line, and I hate those. And then I also love Roffle. So I don't know where I'm supposed to do with this. Yeah, I am also in the boat of like save the casual community and like don't revert this. Just kind of leave it as is, because that's why they nerfed it in the first place, right? Like, it wasn't really that good in standard, but it was terrorizing the bronze through gold or the bronze through plat ranks in standard, and so that's why they nerfed it. And honestly, like, I don't think the format is worse off for not having Pirate Warrior in it, even though it's like kind of an iconic deck of the format. So I'm down. All right, cool. All right, let's move into neutral cards here. Let's start with the watch post. So let's start with the easy one first. Morshan watch post. This is the one that would summon a minion every time your opponent, I think, played a minion or cast a spell or something like that. I don't even remember what it was, because it was never playable in Wild. Reverted back to a 3/5. I don't think anybody is gonna have any issues with that. And now Firewatch post. So this is the 2-drop that every time your opponent would draw a card, it would cost 1 more. It was a 2-4 on release, and it got nerfed to a 2-3. 42% of the community wants it back, though. Where do you guys stand when it comes to Far Watch Post?
It slows down the metagame, right? I mean, it's not the healthiest way to do so. It's not the most fun way to do so, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm desperate at this point, you know? Like, just give me anything to reduce the speed that we're currently at, even if it's watch post. Did you know that it can't attack?
Yeah.
Just saying.
I hate watch posts. Like I did not enjoy the play.
You were the biggest watch post stan though when it was coming out.
Yeah, I believed in it for its power level. Like yeah. But the play experience, oof. I don't know. Like it was such a universal include. Like you play it in kind of everything that's moderate. That's like not straight up aggro. Like you'd be playing in Shadowwalk Reno decks. Like, I don't know. I don't like this card. So let's keep it. I think it's so close. It's like it's just a little too weak where it is right now. But man, 2-4 version is busted.
I think if they don't touch the format, you know, with this Matt London hypothetical Wild Summit, and if they don't slow down combo decks, I am in the boat of Roffle here of like give me anything to potentially fight the combo decks, and Watch Post theoretically does that. Even if it's going to become like the next like Dirty Rat or Lothar, where you then shove it in every deck, and it's going to have some really feels bad instances. But you know what also feels really bad? Dying on Fort of Pillager. So like if it helps theoretically stop that, like I think I'm down.
Yeah, I don't know. It was so strong though, right? Like it's way stronger than Dirty Rat and even Lothar, like in the majority of archetypes. So yeah, I don't know. I just remember the post format. You play it and you couldn't kill it, and all of a sudden then sometimes there was 2 posts on the board. Oh my god.
To be fair, that was also the time that you were playing APM made, so I don't really feel bad for you. All right, that's all I'm gonna say.
First played carries. How dare you?
Yeah, I am also very divided on this. I think it very much depends on what they do, if they do anything when it comes to like results of the Wild Summit, right? Like if they don't, you know, change stuff like Pillager Rogue and Quest Mage, then like I want this back. Like I want this back 100%.
The Wild Summit, that's great.
Hey, look, man, yeah. All right, give me Watch Post back. If you're gonna laugh at the Wild Summit, then I want this back. Okay, so next up we have Pandaran Importer. This was the card that was nerfed because in Standard you would always be able to discover Shadow Step because the spell school was the spell pool was too small. In Wild that's not an issue, so let's bring it back to a 2-mana 1/3. I don't know where it's he play. Probably Demon Hunter, maybe like
Death Knight.
Or that's what I meant. That's what I meant, Death Knight, so that you could discover the other ruined cards. But yeah, most of the community is in the same boat though. 90% to bring it back. All right, Battlemaster. 75% of people wanted to keep it at 6 mana. 25% of you guys wanted it back at 5. I think the fact that Evenlock exists just like fundamentally means that this card cannot change. I don't think you nerf a wild deck in order to revert a card. So
for the format, 6 mana Battlemaster is more nostalgic than 5 mana.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the big one. It's the next up on our list. That is Drekthar. So Drekthar used to summon 2 minions instead of 1. At 1, he sucks. He blows. He's terrible. You never put him in a wild deck. At 2 mana, he was up there for one of the most influential cards in the format. So, do we want him to be influencing the format? Okay. No. All right. Well, it's 60-40 to the community wants it back. 60%. So you guys are gonna have to give an argument as to why you don't want him back.
Yeah, 4 mana card shouldn't win the game.
It's a good argument. Like it's a hell of an argument he's got there.
Yeah, like at the very beginning we were talking about cards that we don't want things that are super polarizing and game ending, and that is what Drekthar is. So,
I mean, it's not even just the power level, right? Like the power level was absurd, like mull win rate, draw win rate stuff, whether it's in Inner Fire or aggro druids, or hey, it actually pushes a lot of degen combo decks, you know, like Frog Shaman, APM Mage, like this is the type of card that's like you don't like that archetype. It's not just that though, like it's not just the fact it's broken. It actually just like homogenizes the entire format. All of a sudden, like half the aggro decks are just like, if you're not a Gen and Baku deck and you don't have a very specific reason not to be playing like cards that cost more mana, all of a sudden everything is just Director. Like whether you're playing aggro druid, whether you're playing Call to Arms Paladin, whether you're playing Inner Fire Priest, you're all Director decks. You're all neutral Call to Arms. And I think that sucks. It locks out other unique class synergies. I think classes in general should be diverging. And it's cool that Wild has decks that mostly use class cards and aren't like giant neutral piles. And I think that it just makes the format less interesting and fun and unique. And it's shitty, you know? Just play your 1-of Call to Arms on turn 4. It's just like, ugh, yuck, don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, part of me, when this got nerfed, was a little bit sad because it was also like the first time that we had seen stuff like Aggro Druid in a long time. It was the first time we had seen Frog Shaman. We had APM Mage.
We had Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter was actually live.
Yeah, we had like the Aggro Demon Hunter. We had Secret Hunter as like a competitive archetype because you would just pull the 2 Cloaked Huntresses out of your deck. Like part of me was a little bit sad to see a lot of like new archetypes disappear, but I also don't think that those archetypes should have been a thing because of a singular card, right? Like it was with Drekthar. And so I'm sorry, the 60% of you guys that want to back as Summon 2, I think you guys are just wrong because I don't think, like Roffle said, a card on turn 4 should just have a 70% spike in winning the game.
Ooh. Fun twist on the combo. Despite what we think, what the community thinks, what do you think the devs will actually do?
This is one where I could see it. I could see it being a kill toss, especially with like it being a diamond card. Like
I think they're gonna do it. Like I'm pretty sure they're gonna do it, and I'm like
I am too.
I don't want them to, but yeah.
If they do, I would like an apology from the 61% of you that voted yes on this. Just saying.
I feel like people are gonna really like that it's back for like a week until people figure out like the broken thing to be doing with the Mankrik, or sorry, not the Mankrik, the Drekthar, and then they're gonna get sick of it real quick. Because like I don't think people like in Paladin now you don't get to play any of the new cards or anything like that because you play Call to Arm. Like every deck is like Corbett mentioned. You're going to play this card, it's going to increase your win percentage by like 20%. And I think those are the things that we are complaining about in the format, right? Where these super early swing turns that are hard to interact with. And I think Drekthar is kind of like the epitome of that. And so I would really like them to not do that. Yeah. Damn, the 61% want this thing back. I don't think people remember. That's kind of insane. All right.
Well, I just think it's currently like a present problem issue. Like kind of almost what I was talking about with Mithrod. It's just like you do kind of miss the long-term picture because it doesn't see play in the current aggro decks, right? And there are no combo decks that people are using it in, so like people just don't see it because it doesn't see play in like Pirate Rogue, even Shaman Secret Mage.
And then would you play it in Pirate Rogue? Because like you're not playing Smite anymore. Like you probably played in Pirate Rogue.
I know Dread Corsair and Fellwing are kind of Hearthstone cards.
Oh, I forgot about those. Those don't cost 4 mana though. Those cost 0. So. Yeah, that's true. All right. Okay, let's move on to Ice Revenant. This is the card that they nerfed for Frost DK, and thank God they did because that deck is terrorizing the WoW metagame. If you look at Corb's tweets, at least.
HS Replay, standard Frost DK, second highest win rate in Wild right now. It's behind even Shaman at Legend.
Thank God they nerfed Ice Revenant then, right?
Isn't that insane? Like,
yeah, it is insane. And the insane part is that Ice Revenant wouldn't even be good in the deck because it's primarily a minion based deck, not like a spell spam thing. So it wouldn't change anything at all. But at the same time, like Horn of Winter does still exist. I don't know like if stick a minion, then play a bunch of cards in Wild is that scary though. So I could go. I just don't care on this. There's no nostalgia attached to this card. I don't think there's any reason to unnerf it. I don't think it will literally change anything if it does get unnerfed.
Yeah. Ice Revenant, refresh, Frost Strike. You made 4-mana 8/9. Kind of popping. Bring it back, sure. I don't know. Like, what's the harm?
Yeah, what's the harm in the 4-mana 8/9? I mean, 4-mana 7/7s are unplayable, right?
That's
4-mana
true.
8/9s can't be that much better. All right, Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan started off with the text of if you have no dragon, or what is it? If what
Every
was the
minion
original
in your
text on this
deck,
thing?
every minion in your deck is a dragon.
Yeah, something like that, right? But
So then if you have
it was
no minions-
abused. Yeah, it was abused for like if you were just playing a deck that either could draw through your deck super fast or just like only ran Kazakhstan as like your only minion. And so they eventually changed it so that you had to have played 4 dragons in order to get the treasures effect. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, about where we kind of stand on the treasures or not. But it looks like the community is kind of split 50-50 of like keeping it as is versus the full revert. And I think this also has a little bit to do with like the wild paw conversation of like what was the flavor of the card intended to be versus like, you know, where would it be playable and where did people kind of fall, I think, along that spectrum.
Yeah, I'm equally torn on this one. I don't know. I think that I'm fine with whatever decision that they make on this one. From a play pattern experience, I think it's probably interesting to just like remove the requirement for playing dragons just because of the speed of the format and just like go back to not requiring dragons in your deck, or non-dragons in your deck, I suppose. And even then, like I think Locust is probably fine. Things in the game so much quicker than Kazakhstan in the format. So from a pure balance perspective, I'm fine with any form of revert on Kazakhstan. But again, from like the spirit intention of the card, I could understand them leaving it as well, just requiring the dragon upkeep. It makes for more interesting deck building, I think, a lot of times, which is nice. But am I willing to sacrifice a cool end game strategy for the sake of like forcing people to play dragons? Probably not. I think just let people have fun. It's an 8-mana card.
Card unplayable with dragons. Card fun and strong with no dragons. So it's like I want the strong fun win condition. Like I prefer that,
Yeah.
than what we have right now.
And we've talked
As for
about
as for Locust, that's the summon charges, right?
Mm-hmm.
the 2/2s that hit any target. Yeah, that you've.
Oh, you target the face and yeah, okay. Whatever. Like I don't know, whatever they want to do.
I mean, at that point, you have emptied your deck, you've played a Kazakhstan, and then spending another 7 mana on this. I think it's fine. I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, I don't think the power level of the treasures is anything egregious for the format. So, I think we're down. All right, we're getting towards the end, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. Mancrick 310 versus 3/7. 80% of people want it back as a 3/10. Corb said no for flavor reasons, but outside of flavor reasons, do you think that influences anything?
My favorite card anyway, because it's just like so swingy. Whether you played a spider tank or did you play a 3-mana 6/14, so it's like I don't love it as a card anyway. So I'd rather just keep it.
Okay, Iron Deep Trog. Community got this one right in not creating non-games. 80% of people want to leave it as is, instead of reverting it back to summoning a copy. Yeah. Thank God they made this change.
Yeah.
And thank God the community can see through the not wanting it back.
Yeah, that's one that they definitely remembered the pain of of the original version of. Good job, everyone.
I think it's helped that the card remained like pretty playable. You know, it's still fresh in people's memories that like they can lose to a Trog right now. So it's like, oh, buffed version. That seems scary.
Yeah, unlike what was it, Gibberling that you used to play in Aggro Druid, where like it could have end games on turn 1, and then when it got nerfed to 2 mana, and you just like never saw it ever again, and then people kind of wanted it back, and I don't think
You're people.
I know.
you
Like I said,
wanted it.
I have learned my lesson. All right, my
I
fun is
know.
no
We
longer
don't-
at the
yeah,
expense of
he's-
everybody else's. Okay.
Yeah, he's doing good. We don't need to.
I've
harp on
learned.
it.
I've grown as a person. All right.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Thank you. Last but not least, let's talk about Mr. Smite. 7 mana versus 6 mana. I don't think that they're going to do it because Pirate Rogue is a deck. I don't think they are going to, even if it doesn't see play in current versions of Pirate Rogue. I don't think that reverted just in case. But
I mean, I see
think,
it play. It sees play in the bot list. It sees play at lower ranks.
There's a bit of play. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's great, but I don't think we need to make it great. Like just like 6 mana deal 6. That's no, you don't need that in as a neutral charger that also has upside, especially like after they printed Fillet Fighter. Like you just do not need this to be at 6.
Yeah, it's pretty like fringe right now, but like it's I think that's more to do with the meta. Like the meta is so fast right now that like when the Smite basically like flipped matchups like even Reno Warlock when it came out. Like that used to be like a 60% favorite for the Warlock. Smite got printed, and all of a sudden like Pirate Warrior was just like 60-40 in the opposite direction. So like if the meta does slow down, there are like things in the future. I think it's fine to just like leave it as is. You know, card's borderline playable, and it's not the kind of card that I think we want to be pushed anyway. So
yeah, agreed.
All right, that's all the like 60 cards. We've made it through.
A lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
We disagreed a lot less than I thought we were going to be. So that means that, you know, we're good. We're on the same page. We did disagree a lot with the community, though. So if you guys disagreed with us, let us know down in the comments as to why we're wrong and dumb, and you should get your favorite card back. But yeah, I guess the question is, how many cards do you think they're going to go out of their way and like surprise us with, like with the hero cards or some of the quest lines or even Drekthar? Like, how much of a possibility do you think it is?
Drekthar and the quest lines are the ones that I'm the most concerned about, just because I think those have the highest risk associated with them, and also like at least seemingly in the developers' minds, the highest like nostalgia associated with them potentially, because they were popular, because they were strong. But that's why they're concerning to me as like risky choices, you know.
Oh, it's sort of circular. Yeah. Yeah, definitely those ones like Drekthar hero cards. Watch Post concerns me. But apart from that, like I don't know. Like it's more like I'm concerned that they won't do some stuff. Even as much as like concerned that they do some stuff. Like I'm concerned that they won't do Kazakhstan because I'm like, I'd like that if that was a thing. But for the most part, I don't know, like whether it's us or the community, I think people are pretty in line and recognize where potential dangers are. It's just a matter of whether those dangers come to fruition or not.
Yeah, I wonder how much the Kael'thas shenanigans of last year are gonna weigh on them when they come to like choosing what to revert or not. Like if there's any risk, I wonder if they're just gonna be like, no, because we don't want to repeat. And I don't think that's good for us. Like I don't want them to have that opinion or that mindset, but I'm worried that they might.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, there rightfully was quite a bit of pushback to the Kael'thas on Nerf last time around, so they may be a little gun shy coming out of it.
Maybe, but I'm also kind of like, are the devs losing sleep of a wild community complaints? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the harm, right? Like I don't know. I feel like the Kael'thas thing, it's easy to see that it's just like a blip and a mistake and just like something.
It was like the one mistake they've made, right? It's like the one mistake.
Yeah. So I'm expecting them to not really change their philosophy too much. Like I expect Rekthar. I think they'll nerf it, and I think it's gonna be a bit of a disaster. But
yeah,
let's not get too doomer before it happens.
Hey, look, we have no other choice, all right? That's all we're allowed to be about the WoW format right now until at least we see the results of that Wild Summit thing, you know? Put an image of Copium up on the podcast there, right there. Yeah, I'm excited. I am very excited because it's, like I said, it's like our Christmas, right? It's like the one thing that we get because we don't get a Wild Open anymore. That's what we get. I'm excited to see what we get and how it potentially impacts the format. And I at least personally, I have changed my hopes and what I expect because instead of fighting fire with fire, like was my mindset in previously, very much will this be more fun? And I think the answer for a lot of these is yes, right? So I hope that they make a lot of the changes. But yeah, thanks for hanging out for 2 hours talking about reversions with me, guys, and thanks to everybody in the community, like the over 400 of you guys that voted in the poll. So appreciate you guys. Let us know down in the comments what you disagree with. Right? Tell us why we're wrong and why your favorite card needs to be reverted. And yeah, Roffle and Corp, thanks for joining me. Let the people know where they can find you guys and your content.
Yeah, you can find my videos over on YouTube at Roffle and streams on both YouTube and Twitch at Roffle as well.
And you can always come flame me about the Demon Seed at twitch.tv/Corbett or YouTube and Twitter at Corbettgames. And yeah, just to reiterate, thank you guys so much for all filling out not all of you, but the massive amount of you that filled out the poll, like having, over 400 responses are very like engaged. People with the community lets us do episodes like this, but also just reminds us how many people are kind of tuning in and want to be a part of the community and involved and things like that and give us your thoughts. So thank you guys very much for everyone that did actually go and, fill out the sheet and things.
Could not have said that better myself. Thanks. And yeah, you guys can find me at Get Me Out on all those platforms as well. Primarily going to be focused on the podcast and stuff while I finish up school, but we're going to hopefully be doing some more unique episodes over the next little bit here until we get to the new expansion and preview season and everything like that. So hopefully you guys tune in, and thanks for tuning in every time we do an episode. So I appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys again next time. Later.